Hello and welcome back to In the Spotlight, where we discuss the daily footballing fixtures, talking about different fixture histories, players that have played for both sides, a specific player spotlight, a match flashback, give you some mini games too. As always, we are joined by Junior. How are you doing, Junior?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Into the Christmas week. Merry Christmas to you and all the viewers.
Absolutely. Merry Christmas to anyone watching around that time. Obviously, it's that time of the year, approaching the new year, a very exciting time where people just like to wind down. Obviously, the football season gets a bit manic with the scheduling. But without further ado, let's get on to Monday.
So Monday takes us on to another hot topic where we head to League One with Birmingham City travelling down south to face Crawley. But what we're going to talk about, Matt, today is the kind of injection in money in specific clubs that we've seen in the lower leagues over recent years. Obviously, Birmingham are one of them, being taken over by Tom Brady. Wrexham, of course, is a very well-known takeover over the last few years. And I just want to know your thoughts on whether this injection of money into specific clubs is good for those lower leagues or bad. Because on one hand, some could say, they're kind of buying their way through the leagues. I know, like Birmingham, for example, I think they smashed the League One transfer record when they brought in Jay Stansfield. But on the positive, because there's so much interest and there's so many eyes on these clubs now. You've got League One, League Two, the National League getting so many more viewers, so much more money, and so much more revenue into the leagues that some would say it's a good thing. So, Matt, what are your thoughts?
It's a very interesting question. I think it's always going to come down to, people, you ask this question to a fan of a side who have had that takeover, and I think they'll appreciate it massively. I think it's always like a question where it's like, if the shoe's on the other foot, people are very appreciative. People want to see their club be successful. People want to see their teams going up the divisions, having huge names potentially associated with them. Players want to play for clubs which are owned by absolute superstars. So I think there's that perspective, and I think there's almost a perspective where some clubs might be getting left behind if they don't. And I'm not to say that every team is going to be like Wrexham and obviously have some A-star actors or whatever purchase themselves. But I think in general, football's such a sport which people appreciate loads. They appreciate the potential in it, in the lower leagues as well, as you say, which has become very apparent. And at the end of the day, it's a business, and it's something where a lot of people see football is such a passionate, such a well-watched sport. How can we get involved? And obviously, a lot of the Premier League clubs or all the Premier League clubs aren't quite in that investment area. So then you have the likes of, obviously, as you mentioned, Wrexham, Salford City, etc., where they go to. So to answer your question of whether that's a good thing, I think, you have higher quality, you have a bit more of an imbalance, maybe a bit more of a monopoly with the bigger sides or the sides who have that takeover. But ultimately, it's almost going to come down to your perspective of, if you're a side who have not had that takeover, you're going to maybe feel a bit hard done by, a bit frustrated because you play the likes of Wrexham and you feel like they've got a squad which is above their level. And ultimately, it's kind of just become something which is not normalised, so to speak, but something where, when football is such a powerful industry, such a profitable industry, this is where a lot of people have decided to go for their investments. So to answer as like a quick one, I think it's good for the eyes of the sport and the commercial side. I don't think it's amazing for the competition in the lower sides, but it's almost becoming you've got to adapt.
Yeah, I think I can see why, especially some of the smaller clubs will feel hard done by, and it is difficult for them. But I think overall it is a good thing for those sports. I mean, as you touched upon there, the quality in the teams are improving, and I think it was ESPN reported that since they've been showing Wrexham games, their viewership has gone up. I think almost 860% just from a direct impact of Wrexham. And that brings money back into the league. That brings money back into like the teams, and it helps them out. And again, we go to Birmingham in a league, in a League One capacity. They've got St Andrews, such an old school stadium. They've got nearly 30,000 capacity. You've got 30,000 like sellout stadium in a League One fixture. I think that's incredible. That's so good to see, and I think overall it's just going to bring more eyes onto the league. And I think there are going to be some teams that feel hard done by and they aren't happy with this. But I think overall it is better for the sport. It's better for those lower leagues. It gets more eyes on them. And I think it's a positive for me personally.
Tuesday and Wednesday this week are actually going to be collaborated because this is the time of Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, times where you'll be spending a lot with your family, having a lovely time, opening some presents, and most notably, might be receiving some retro shirts. So, as a bit of a wild card, we're going to be talking about retro shirts. And what we've done is me and Junior have picked out from the three different decades of the 1980s, the 1990s, and the 2000s. We've picked out three shirts, one of each decade, to share and let you know what you guys think about it, share between ourselves, and just appreciate some absolute classics over the years. And as always, let us know down below, what is your favourite retro shirt? Starting with the 1980s to the 1990s, I've gone with Netherlands' shirt from the Euros, the home shirt, the beautiful orange colour, the patterns. It's phenomenal. It's a classic. And Junior, I'm not sure what you think about it, and I'd be really intrigued to hear your pick from this decade, but I think this is a lovely, lovely shirt.
Oh, it's iconic, man, isn't it? It's one of the iconic ones. You see it a lot now, people repping this retro shirt. And yeah, for me, it just stands out. It's bold, that orange colour, the orange as they're known. I think it's a great kit, and you got the sort of old school Adidas logo on there as well, and you had some incredible players donning this shirt as well in the 80s. So yeah, this one's an absolute banger for sure. What made you choose this one?
It's difficult, isn't it? I feel like you look at a lot of shirts nowadays and you feel like they're either, obviously the replicas and whatnot, but they're not really ones recreated or re-released. But I think with this one, it has been re-released in the past, I believe, or I've at least seen it recently. And I think it's almost like where you think about where has this player come from, or where, you see those posts of when you see this shirt, what player does it remind you of? And it very much springs to mind like a Ruud Gullit type of feel. And I think just like the colour, the iconic nature of it, I think it's the first pick for me. And I'd love to get onto your first pick.
So for the 80s, I'm actually going for a Premier League side, the 85-86 QPR home shirt. Now, again, I'm not a QPR fan or anything, but for me, I'm not a huge fan of striped shirts. I feel like they look wrong more than they look right, but I just think that they nailed this one with the classic blue and white of QPR with the red trim as well. I think looks great. And then the Guinness logo just, I don't know, it just, for me, like this kit just fits in perfectly in it, and it's a beautiful number.
Yeah, absolutely lovely. And I like the fact you've gone for a more niche shout. Obviously there's a lot of absolute classics and they really deserve to be spoken about. But I like the fact you've gone for Queen's Park Rangers. Any Queen's Park Rangers fans, let us know down below what is your favourite kit from your side. And also to reiterate as well with our kits, we've decided not to pick an Arsenal kit or a Spurs kit, the teams we support, just for a bit of variation, appreciating kits which don't have that element of bias attached to them. But without further ado, I'll take you on to my second kit from the 1990s to the 2000s, which honestly, I've got three picks and I'm still struggling to pick between them. I'll mention them all, but I'll pick one as a final because I can't really be copying out too much. But initially I picked the Barcelona shirt from the 1995 season, or that type of era. Obviously the iconic red and blue. It's just so minimalistic, which I think is really nice. And you mentioned you don't really like striped shirts, but I think that one's an exception as well. And I don't know about you, Junior, but I feel like I really appreciate the minimalistic shirts, the ones where there's not too much going on.
Oh, 100%. I mean, with this one, I actually really like shirts that don't have sponsors. I mean, like Chelsea's shirt, I think last season, I don't even think they've got a sponsor this season, have they? But I actually think it looks so much nicer without sponsor, and this Barca one definitely does that. I think the subtle Kappa logo in the kit as well just looks class. For me, I should have clarified, I don't like hooped striped shirts. I like sideways shirt stripes. For this one, this is a beauty, and this is a 10/10 from me.
Brilliant. And I'll just give the honourable mentions, or honestly, one of these two probably overtakes that Barcelona kit, which just goes to show the phenomenal options there's been. But the Argentina 1994 kit, absolutely beautiful. Obviously, a picture of it will be shown on the screen now. That dark blue, once again, very minimalistic in terms of the sponsors. You've got obviously the Argentina badge and you've got Adidas, but not too much else. You've got a nice black collar, which complements the blue really well. You've got some really cool zigzaggy type patterns on the left, which I'm not against a bit of variation. Obviously, I said I like simplicity, but I think if it goes, it goes, and I think that one just goes brilliantly. And the final shirt from this type of era, just worth mentioning once again. I'm a big fan of a pink kit, Junior, and Juventus's from 1997 to 98, the iconic Sony sponsor, the pink, as I said, the pink and black. It's a match made in heaven, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, it's a real nice kit. Juve have had a couple of nice pink kits in their past. I remember the one with the giant star. Was it a giant star in it? I think in like the maybe like '08 season or something like that. So yeah, pink's hard to nail, but they definitely have done that a couple of times.
Just to not cop out, I will give you a final answer, one which I prefer the most. Argentina's 1994 kit is going to just about take it. I love the pink kit and I love the Barcelona kit, but I'm going to edge the Argentina's kit. But enough with the dilemmas. Junior, you've got it in much more simple, haven't you, for this era?
Yeah, for me, I'm a big fan of kind of quirky and like big kits. As you can see, obviously behind me, I've quite a lot of like vintage shirts. But Fiorentina had some beauties back in the 90s, and this 92-93 away shirt with the white sort of bottom half and then the purple pattern on top. Obviously, purple iconic with Fiorentina, the Italian side, and then even with the Seven Up sponsor, they had some really cool sponsors in the 90s. They had Nintendo, I think, a couple of kits before that as well. So yeah, this one for me, I'm a big fan of this Fiorentina shirt.
Absolutely brilliant one. And to be honest, I nearly picked it as well, but considering you've already had three options from that decade, it's probably a good thing I didn't. But moving on to the final decade, the 1990, or sorry, 2000 to 2010, I've gone with, like QPR, going a bit niche. I've also gone quite niche. I've gone with Sampdoria's kit from scraping the 2000 barrier with this. You could probably tell that my favourite decade of the three was the 1990 to 2000 in terms of shirts. But I've gone with Sampdoria's kit from the 2000 to 2001. I said I liked minimalistic, but the Dreamcast sponsor, particularly as an Arsenal fan, that's very iconic. The logo and obviously the few different sponsors and the big stripes down the middle, stripes all around, and there's a lot going on in the shirt, but I just think it's a really nice, unique shirt. What do you think, Junior? And I'd love to hear your final one.
I think it is simplistic in its own way, and there's not too much going on, but I love that, and I think some shirts in particular look great as long sleeves, and this one looks fantastic as a long sleeve. I mean, the Italians, they knew how to make a beautiful kit, but I really like this one again. The blue is such a beautiful blue, and even the collar, it just I don't know, it kind of has that iconic sort of late 90s, early 2000s vibe. And look, sort of continuing the Italian theme for me, I've gone with AC Milan. Obviously, the Fiorentina kit was a bit quirky, a bit out there. For my last kit, I've gone much more simplistic and a very iconic. It's the 2000-2001 AC Milan away kit, the classic white and red of AC. Opel sponsor. It's just a beautiful kit. It reminds me of those players like Kaká, those kind of players who would don this kit later on in this decade. For me, this is up there. It's simplistic, but it is beautiful. What are your thoughts on this Milan kit, Matt?
I think it's absolutely lovely. And I think you mentioned the sponsor. You almost look at some of these kits and just get excited by the nostalgia of the sponsor. I know it sounds crazy. And I know you said, like obviously Fiorentina, specifically 7 Up, Nintendo, a lot of different intriguing sponsors. But I think there's just a lot of fun with the nostalgic sponsors and the nostalgic kits. And I mentioned earlier on what player pops to your head. What I want you guys to tell us in the comments below is when you see this kit, the AC Milan Opel kit, what player pops to your head first? Moving swiftly on to Thursday, where we head to a player spotlight and a certain James Milner, ex-Brighton, ex-Leeds, I think it's Aston Villa, and of course ex-Liverpool and Manchester City. The Englishman has been around in terms of positions, in terms of games, a very underappreciated player. His longevity is unbelievable. You look at the fact he's still playing for Brighton now with the quality and the youth players they have, it says it all about him. And in terms of his longevity, it's actually his 23rd season in the top flight. Junior, think about that for a second. 23rd season.
I mean, it's incredible, and the player that Milner is, like as we mentioned, two of his former teams, Villa and Newcastle, facing off on Boxing Day. I think to play 23 seasons in any division, let alone the top flight of probably the best division in the world, it speaks volumes to the man. And for him, and he's second in the all time appearances in the Premier League with 637. For him and Gareth Barry, who's number one, the fact that I think not only the fact that they've had such longevities with their performances and the amount of appearances they made, but the position they play as well. That for those two, I feel like up until like only a few years ago, central midfield was probably the most influential and active position in a football match. And the fact that these two have played that position for decades speaks so highly of them too. And for Milner, I know that he had an injury last season with Brighton, which I think he was out for about 4 or 5 months. But before that, he hadn't had an injury that had kept him out for longer than 40 days. And to do that in over 20 years, yeah, it speaks volumes of the man. And you hear these stories of in pre-season in training with whichever team he was, whether it was Liverpool, Brighton, even at this late stage of his career, he was always one of the fittest players. So yeah, these players are just very professional. They're managers' dreams. They just don't ever kick up a fuss. They don't cause any dramas. And he's only 16 appearances away from breaking Gareth Barry's record. Hopefully, he can do it this season.
Ridiculous, isn't it? And I think what's really funny about particularly James Milner is if I said to you, where do you have James Milner in your head, where he's played, what would your answer be? And I think the reason I ask that is I remember he had a stint at left back for Liverpool, a stint at right back for Liverpool. Obviously being more of a central midfielder for now at Brighton, I'm sure he's been a wing back at some point. He's played off the right for Liverpool before, he's played off the right for City before. He has been absolutely everywhere. I'm sure you could find a game where he's been a centre back or a striker. Probably not quite a goalkeeper, but that just
he could probably do a job there as well, though.
I mean, if he's up for it, then be interesting to see it, wouldn't it? But no, a brilliant player, a pretty big fixture as well in the Premier League, of course. Newcastle versus Aston Villa, hosted at St James's Park. A crunch game for the top six, maybe the top four. We'll have to see.
So Friday takes us into another Premier League fixture, Brighton hosting Brentford in the Premier League. And this one's going to be a fixture history because, Matt, something that I actually found out that was really, really interesting about these two clubs is that they faced each other in all four of the English top flight divisions. And the fact that they've both come up through the ranks, made their way to the top, and are now, almost established themselves as top 10 teams. Brighton having played in Europe last season. I just want to take you on a little bit of a journey through the divisions with these two sides. So, kicking it all off back in the early 90s, we're visiting that decade quite a lot this episode. In the 88-89 season, back in the old Div 3, which was now known as League 2, Brighton and Brentford facing off against each other. Brentford would go on to win the league. Brighton would finish 17th. The home side winning the fixture in both of those fixtures. Fast forward a couple of years, and both of these teams are now in League One. And Brentford will actually complete the double over Brighton. Brighton, however, did win the league that year, and Brentford finished third, would go into the playoffs, but unfortunately would not get promoted, losing in the final. Fast forward to the 2015-16 season, where they're both in the Championship. Actually, ironically, playing on Boxing Day, where they drew 0-0 in Brentford before they went down to the South Coast, where Brighton won 3-0. Brighton finished third that season and drew 1-0 with Middlesbrough on the final day, with Borough pipping Brighton to that final second spot and automatic promotion. Brighton would go into the playoffs and unfortunately would fall short to Sheffield Wednesday. That actually was the time where I had a season ticket at Brighton, and those championship days are absolutely phenomenal. That season in particular was a really, really good season to be following Brighton. And then fast forward a couple of years, the last three or four seasons, Brighton and Brentford have played each other in the Premier League. They've come all the way through the ranks. And the first season they played each other in the top flight was 2021-22 season, where they actually both finished, Brighton in 9th, Brentford in 13th, considering that they've recently been promoted. Talk to me about how established these two teams are now and how cool it is that they've come up through the divisions together.
I mean, if you had to say, what are two teams which reflect on the modern day impact of scouting, of decision making, of doing the right thing, it would be Brighton and it would be Brentford. You look at Tony Bloom, they keep losing key players, they keep losing staff. they've lost so many different players and managers to the likes of Chelsea, to Arsenal, to Liverpool, to everyone, and they keep adapting. And you look at Brentford, lost Ivan Toney, their biggest player, and you haven't overly noticed it. They've been the highest scoring side at home, I believe, or something along those lines.
Best home record as well in the league.
Unbelievable. And their ability to adapt is second to none. Their ability Thomas Frank is an absolute genius and a phenomenal manager and a brilliant one to seemingly work under. I don't know if you saw his speech after I can't remember what game it was, but it was on Saturday a few weeks ago by the time you're watching this now. It was a really nice speech. I think Pinnock got his 100th appearance for the club. And yeah, he seems like such a great manager. And you look at these sides who, in two different ways, they seem to bring different players in and turn them into superstars. Every single time, particularly Brighton, without fail, will bring in a South American gem who at the time is just someone who's come from abroad, learning their trade in the Premier League. And before you know it, they've joined X club for £80 million. And there's still a bunch of players. You look at Buenanotte on loan at Leicester. You look at Julio Enciso, who's a really talented player. You look at João Pedro, who they took the relative gamble on from Watford, who doesn't quite fit in that category, but it's just testament to their decision-making and quality. And those are the two clubs players want to go to, players want to develop at, and those two clubs keep on thriving.
Yeah, absolutely. They're two great examples for fellow teams in the EFL that potentially it can be done. You can work your way through and get up there. And even in Brighton's sake, they were in Europe last season, so anything's possible. Now, a game I want to play with you, Matt, and everyone at home as well. Feel free to play along. There are 14 teams currently in the top 4 English divisions beginning with the letter B. So we're just going to play a little game here. You have 30 seconds on the clock. Same with people at home if you want to participate. I want to see how many of those 14 teams you can name in 30 seconds. Matt, do you fancy it?
Yeah, go on then. Will be good fun. Probably a lot harder when the time pressure kicks in, but why not? We'll give it a go.
Okay, so Matt and everyone at home, your 30-second timer starts now.
Well, Brentford, Brighton, Bournemouth, Bolton Wanderers, Burton Albion, Birmingham, Bristol City, Bristol Rovers, Bromley, Bolton, I think I said them. I think I'm out already.
6 seconds, anyone?
Off. Blackburn,
Nice.
Burnley.
Nice. I think that was like 11 you got.
I'll take that. Who did I miss out?
So Brighton, Brentford, Bournemouth in the Prem, in the Championship, Burnley, Blackburn, Bristol City, Birmingham, Bristol City in League One.
Blackpool. That's annoying.
Birmingham, Blackpool, Barnsley, Bolton, Bristol Rovers.
Barnsley.
In League, I think in League Two, Burton, Bradford, Bromley, and Barrow. You did well though. I think 11. That wasn't too bad. Let us know in the comments how many you got.
Saturday takes us on to a team focus, but it's the return of blind ranking. Junior, we are talking about Porto versus Boa Vista, and what I'm going to get you to do is blind rank 5 ex-Porto players out of quality, who you think is better. You ready?
Okay, yeah, quite a good amount of players have come through Porto, so this should be tasty.
Absolutely, and we will start with none other than Eder Militao, unfortunate with injuries for Real Madrid, but a top defender who got bought directly from Porto and has safe to say flourished. Where's he going?
Oh, that's a big boy out the blocks. Militao has had his injury issues with Real Madrid, but has also just been big for them. I think if it weren't for his injury problems, I actually think that'd be a number 1 straight away. But I don't want to do that. So he's won Champions League, won La Liga titles. I'm gonna put Militao in second. I'm gonna leave that number 1 spot open, but I'm gonna put him in second. I think it's a strong start.
I think that's quite a safe bet, to be honest. And the next player I'm going to go with, it's quite a star-studded list, or maybe I'm bluffing, but the next player I'm going to go with, another player who learnt his trade at Porto, was phenomenal for them, and throughout his career has been linked with the biggest sides in the Premier League, but has stayed at Wolverhampton Wanderers until he moved to Al Hilal not too long ago. It is Ruben Neves. Because why not?
Oh,
Portuguese accent.
that
Where's
was
he
a really
going?
nice. That was a really nice Portugal accent, actually. What a player! What a player! I mean, I know like Barkley's men gets around a lot, but if there's a championship version of that, because when he was at Wolves, man, in his prime days, absolutely loved the worldie, loved the worldie, man. That guy would only score good goals. He is a phenomenal player. Him and João Moutinho, that Portuguese midfield Wolves had, were phenomenal. Had a really good career with Wolves. Got promoted up to the Premier League, had some good established years in the Premier League, but I fear that there's going to be bigger names in here, so I'm going to put him fourth.
Interesting. A very good career, but we'll have to see. Does that age well? Next up, I'm going to go with a bit of a flash from the past, but a pretty iconic player, particularly if you played FIFA. I'm sure he was a brilliant player elsewhere too, but I do remember in the FIFA 14, FIFA 15, 16 days, he was quite an iconic pick for your midfields. I'm going to go with Colombian Freddy Guarin, who played for Porto before joining
Ooh.
Inter Milan and was pretty prominent there.
Freddie Guarin, I like that shout. Yeah, big player on FIFA in those days. Yeah, big fan of Freddie G. Oh, that's a tough one. Another established midfielder, good for his national side as well. In an era where Colombia actually had maybe one of the better teams for a few decades. I like Guarin, one of those solid players. Not the biggest of names, but a pretty decent one. Having said that, with the quality of names that came in the first two slots, and don't want to overshoot myself. We've got first, third, and fifth available. I am going to put him fifth on this list. I'm going to put him last.
Okay, understandable. There's a lot of big names, as you mentioned, or potential big names. Next up, I'm going to go with current Liverpool forward Luis Diaz, who joined Liverpool just last January for quite a lot of money. A very quick electric player who obviously suffered a bit of an unfortunate injury, which set him back slightly. But quite an exciting player to watch. Scored a great hat-trick against Bayer Leverkusen not too long ago in the Champions League. And, of course, learnt his trade at Inter, which is the common thing with all these players, surprisingly. Where is he going? And then you've got one name after that. So where's he going?
I'm a massive fan of Luis Diaz. I'm a really, really big fan of his. I think not only his ability and his quality, but his work rate. I think that a lot of players obviously have quality, but I don't think they put in as much hard work. But I think Luis Diaz he puts everything on the pitch every single time. He bleeds for his clubs, and I'm a big fan of his. That's a tough one. Do I put him in at number one or do I put him in at number three? I feel like three is a bit harsh for him. Do you know what? Oh, I don't know actually. Is he better than Eder Militao? That's a really tough one. Militao's been brilliant, great Brazilian player, injury issues. I'm I'm gonna go out there. I'm gonna put Diaz at number one. For me, I think he is an absolute phenomenal winger. I would happily have him at Tottenham. I think he's a brilliant player, a great, with a great work ethic, and yeah, I'm gonna put him at number one spot. I think he deserves that.
I'm really sorry to say who number one is, but it's another Colombian forward, and I personally don't think he's the third best player on this list. Any ideas who that may be?
Colombian. Is it Jackson Martinez?
Not quite. Someone
No.
who I think they were in the team of the year at a point.
Ooh,
Unfortunately for yourself,
who is it? Tell me.
it is none other than Radamel Falcao.
Ooh, yeah, that's a tough one. Falcao in at third is yeah. Sorry, Radamel, if you're watching this,
Controversial.
mate. Um, yeah, he very good player. Played for a lot of top teams as well. Had some great spells all over Europe. Yeah, that's a tough one. That's the beauty of blind rankings. In hindsight, I probably would have. Yeah, he probably would have been higher up in the list. Is he number one? I don't know. I don't know for me if he is number one, but in at
Really?
third, it's not the worst blind ranks. I think I got the bottom two right. It's just the top three that could be rotated. But for me, overall, I don't mind that. I don't mind that.
To summarise your list then, so you have gone for Luis Diaz of Liverpool at number one, Eder Militao of Real Madrid at number two, Radamel Falcao out of, I think it's Millonarios at the minute at number 3, Ruben Neves at number 4, and Freddie Guarin at number 5. I think Falcao, a lot of people disagree, but equally that's the fun of blind ranking. I don't quite think you knew that. And to be honest, I changed the order of the list as I was going because I was nearly going to do Falcao third. And I thought, if I throw a player who for me is pretty much clearly number 1, then that's probably going to be a bit too easy, a bit too simple. So threw a curveball. And let us know, how did you guys get on? And do you agree with our list? But what would be your ideal list of those 5 players? Pretty awesome 5-a-side team too.
So the final day of the week, Sunday, takes us into another mouth-watering Premier League tie. It's Leicester v Man City, and we're going to be doing a player spotlight for a player that played for both these teams, won the Premier League with both of these teams as well. It's Riyad Mahrez, the Algerian winger who is now plying his trades out in the Middle East, but had his prime years in the Premier League, was part of that infamous Leicester team that won the Premier League in 2016 before getting a big money move to Man City. And a lot of players struggle in Pep Guardiola's Man City teams, but Mahrez adapted very quickly to Pep's side, and he made almost 300 league appearances for both teams, 82 goals, 62 assists. Matt, where does Mahrez rank as a winger for you in the Premier League?
It's almost like another Ian Wright situation where I can't really give you an exact number, but what I can say is that Leicester season was out of this world. That Leicester few years was out of this world. He's almost a player where, as time's gone on, people have appreciated him more. Maybe the last year or a bit at City, people are getting a bit not frustrated, so to speak, but maybe weren't appreciating quite what City had. But now he's gone, and now City are really struggling for goals outside of Erling Haaland. Obviously, produced a lot more than just goals, but a really fun to watch, a really technical player, cutting inside the top corner goals, a superb player. And it's funny, you mentioned Leicester City being a mouth-watering tie, or Leicester versus Man City being a mouth-watering tie, or mouth-watering game, should I say. Pity we're not doing a fixture history on that, because obviously there's the 1-0 with Vincent Kompany, and there's the completely bonkers, I believe it's 5-2 a few years ago at the Etihad. So there's been their fair share there. But onto Riyad Mahrez, a phenomenal player, and I think top 10 is fair in terms of Premier League wingers. When it's all said and done, yeah, could you maybe he cuts into that top 5, maybe 6th or 7th would be a fair ranking. So I feel like top 10 doesn't quite do him justice, particularly given the role he played in that Leicester fairy tale side and few seasons. But where's he ranking for you, Junior? What a player, by the way.
I mean, top 15, maybe top 10. Like he was phenomenal. As you said, he was pivotal for that Leicester team. Like almost Iron Robin-esque, where he'd play on the right, cut in on his left. Defenders would know that that's what he wanted to do, but they still couldn't stop him. We speak about iconic Leicester City games. That season where they won the Premier League as well. They went to Leicester and won. I think Mahrez scored and Robert Hughes scored as well as they won at the City at the Etihad. Sorry. So they've had some big games, these two, and yeah, for me, Mahrez is up there. To be honest, he's a phenomenal winger, very consistent, very all-round great player, and a Barclays Premier League winner with both teams. So yeah, let us know in the comments, where does Mahrez rank in your all-time Premier League wingers list, and how good of a player was he? Because I think he's up there, maybe a bit underrated.
I think it's also difficult because you talk about a top 10 or a top 15 list or anything like that. If you gave me a list of wingers out in front of me now, I could give you an exact answer of, okay, I think, or not exact answer, but a rough, better idea. But we also forget how many top players there were, but he was highly influential for both sides. But yeah, as Junior said, how highly do you rate him? Where does he rank?
Amazing. Well, that will round off this week's In the Spotlight episodes. Of course, a little bit of a mixed up one with a couple of days missing fixtures, but we hope you all have a wonderful Christmas if you're celebrating it. From everyone here at the Striver team, we can't wait to bring you more amazing, out there content in the new year. 2025 is going to be a big one. Matt, have a lovely Christmas, and obviously subscribe, comment down below anything that you want us to speak about in the upcoming episodes, and we'll see you on the next one.